All right, let's dive into Sally Rooney's Conversations with Friends. We've got this book review you gave me, and I'm ready to unpack it all.
Yeah, it's a book that really stays with you. All the relationships and themes. I think we'll find some really interesting stuff in here.
For sure. Okay, so basic premise. Two college students, their exes, Francis and Bobby,
Right.
and they get drawn into the world of this older married couple, Melissa and Nick.
Right.
And things get complicated.
Oh, yeah. The premise alone. You got,
Right.
young people, older people, ambition, so much intrigue right away.
Yeah, and then Rooney throws in this whole affair between Francis and Nick,
Yes?
which really sets it all off. I mean, she's known for those relationship dynamics that are so hard to even talk about, and she really gets into it here.
You can tell there's, all this tension, even when the conversation is, casual.
Yeah, totally. Well, before we get into all that, we should talk about Sally Rooney herself for a second.
Oh, Sally Rooney. She's become, what, a huge literary star. I mean, all her stories about modern life and relationships.
Yeah, Conversations with Friends was actually her debut novel. It really established her style. What do you think makes her writing so unique?
Well, she can really get you into the characters' heads.
Yeah.
Even though her writing is so spare, it's almost like she trusts you as the reader to fill in those gaps. And I think that can be so powerful.
It really does. It really leaves you with that feeling, like you've been let in on something private.
Yes, exactly. Okay, now, the characters. We have Frances, our main character.
Yeah.
She's introspective, quiet, a writer, just trying to figure things out.
And Bobby, her ex, she's the opposite. Confident, outspoken. They're so different. It's really interesting.
It makes you think about, how differently people approach relationships. Frances keeps everything inside.
Yeah.
And Bobby, she's almost like she's performing.
Right. And then we have the older couple, Melissa and Nick. They kind of sweep Francis and Bobby into their world. Melissa, a successful essayist. Francis really admires her, but is also kind of intimidated by her.
I wonder if it's a class thing, too. Because Frances comes from a working class background.
Oh, yeah.
And Melissa and Nick are very well off.
Totally. And then there's Nick, Melissa's husband, an actor. He develops this, deep connection with Frances.
Yes.
Very secretive, which, of course, leads to that affair.
Right.
Which throws everything into chaos. So we've got these four characters, all these desires.
Yeah.
So complicated. What are some of the big themes Rooney explores here?
Well, one of the first things that jumps out is this idea of power and control. In all the relationships, it's always there under the surface.
Yeah.
She's showing us these little power dynamics that are always playing out. Like with Frances and Nick, how much does the age difference affect things?
For Francis, Nick represents stability, experience, which might be attractive because she's so young. But then it also creates this imbalance of power, especially with the affair.
Right. So you have to wonder who's really in control. Is Frances making her own choices?
Yeah.
Age, social status, even just personality, it can all change the power dynamic so much. Do you think you've seen that in your own life?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think we've all had those moments where we wonder if we're really following our own desires or being influenced by someone else, and Rooney gets that so well.
Yeah. It's not just about these characters, it's about us too.
Absolutely. Okay. Another big one for me was this tension between love and being independent, especially for Frances.
Oh, yes.
She wants to be close to people, but she needs her independence too. She's always battling these two sides of herself.
I think that's so relatable. Everyone wonders, how much should I give up for love?
Right. It's do I take care of myself or do I prioritize the relationship?
Exactly.
And Rooney doesn't give you any easy answers.
Yeah, she doesn't judge the characters or tell you what they should do. It's all about, how complicated these things really are.
Right. And speaking of complicated, I have to mention how the book looks at relationships. I mean, are Frances and Bobby friends? Are they more?
Yeah, it's like she's questioning how we define relationships. They don't fit into boxes.
Yeah.
It's like what we're seeing more and more these days. Have you ever had a relationship that was hard to label?
Oh, yeah, totally. I think everyone's been in those situations where it's what are we? And I think that's what makes the book so interesting. It's honest, even when it's about taboo stuff.
It makes you realize that relationships aren't simple.
Right.
There's always going to be overlap,
Yeah.
ambiguity, and you're always working out the boundaries.
For sure. Well, we've talked about some pretty heavy stuff here, but it's clear Rooney isn't afraid to dive into all that human connection stuff. What do you admire about how she approaches it?
Well, her dialogue. It's so real and layered. It's not just what they say, it's what they don't say,
Mhm.
you know?
Right, like every conversation has all these hidden meanings. It keeps you guessing, what are they really thinking?
Exactly. And the writing itself, it's simple, but it really pulls you in.
Yeah, like she trusts you to figure out the emotions, and I find that really rewarding.
Totally. You're not just reading the story, you're a part of it.
It's like a conversation between the author and the reader.
I love that. And that's what makes running so good. It's not just for fun. It makes you think about the big stuff.
Yeah.
Love, connection, what does it all mean?
So we've got the characters, the plot, some big ideas. What parts of this story will really get people thinking, maybe even make them uncomfortable?
Well, Frances herself, some people find her too passive, emotionally distant, hard to connect with her.
Yeah, she's definitely an observer. She keeps everything bottled up. That can be frustrating if you like a character who takes charge.
But it also shows how some people are. She's always analyzing herself, thinking about her feelings, and that creates a distance from other people.
Right. She's trapped in her own head. It can be lonely, but also really relatable. And that kind of leads into the next thing people talk about, the pacing. Some people think it's too slow. Not enough happens.
Right. It's about the characters,
Yeah.
the changes in their relationships, not about big events. Do you like that kind of slow, introspective style?
I do. I think there's something really powerful about stories that focus on how the characters feel inside. It feels real. It's how life really is, you
Yeah,
know?
right.
But I can see why some people would want more action, more to happen.
For sure. And then there's the ending.
Oh, yeah.
Very ambiguous.
Yeah.
Rooney loves to leave things open-ended.
Yeah, some people hate it. They want answers, like what happens next.
Right.
But others like it. They see it as more true to life.
Yeah.
Things don't always get wrapped up.
Exactly. It's like she's saying, you figure it out. What do you think happens?
Like life, right? You don't always get a neat ending.
Exactly. And that's why people connect with Rooney's work. She gets how complicated life is.
Yeah.
The messiness of it all, the big questions that we never really answer. It's funny, even when nothing much is happening, the book still feels kind of unsettling.
Right. Like you're waiting for something to explode, even though it's all about the characters and their emotions, not like big dramatic events.
Like a pressure cooker. You know it's going to blow.
Yeah, but you don't know when. It keeps you on edge in a totally different way.
That's what's so good about her writing, She creates that tension without needing the usual tricks. It's all psychological.
It really is. It's about those internal stakes. And honestly, those are the ones that feel the most real.
I think it's about how we experience life, right? Those big desires and fears and all the messiness of relationships.
One thing that really struck me was how Rooney captures this kind of emotional distance that feels so, like, modern. These characters are so self-aware. It's almost like they're too afraid to just feel things.
Right. They use all that intellectual stuff like it's a shield,
Yeah.
so they don't have to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Makes you wonder if they even can be truly close to someone, or if they're just playing a part.
Like they're watching themselves from the outside, which feels so relevant, right? There's this pressure to be cool and detached, even if you have to shut down your emotions.
Do you feel that in your own life? I mean, do you ever feel that pressure?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like everyone's afraid to be too open, too vulnerable, especially now when everything's online.
Yeah. Like you're always performing, even in your closest relationships.
Exactly. You have this audience in your head. And I think Rooney really gets that tension,
Yeah.
trying to protect yourself, but then you end up isolated.
It's tough to break out of that cycle.
Makes you think, is it worth it? To give up connection just to protect yourself?
Right. I mean, is there a way to have both? To be safe, but also really connect with someone?
Maybe it's about finding people who let you be both, strong and vulnerable.
Okay, let's talk about the reaction to the book. A lot of praise, but also some criticisms.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those books that people have really strong feelings about, which I think shows how powerful it is. It makes you question things.
It sparked a lot of discussion. What were the main things people disagreed on?
Well, like we said, some people just didn't like Frances. They thought she was too passive, too hard to root for.
Yeah, she's not your typical hero.
Right. It's more about how she's changing on the inside,
Right.
figuring herself out.
Right. And some people just want a character with strong morals who's fighting for something.
And, every reader is different. What works for one person might not work for another.
Oh, for sure.
And that's the cool thing about books. They create these different reactions.
Oh, okay. Another criticism was the pacing. Some readers found it slow, Not enough action?
If you want car chases and explosions, this isn't the book for you.
Yeah, it's much more internal.
Like slowly enjoying something delicious. You savor it, it's not a quick thrill.
Right, and I think that sets Rooney apart. She doesn't follow the usual rules. It's all about the characters and how real they feel.
It's a different way of looking at stories. You have to slow down and really pay attention to the subtle things.
And speaking of things that need you to trust the author, let's talk about the ending.
The ending. It's definitely divisive.
So many people are upset because they want answers, but others find it powerful. They think it reflects real life, how messy it is.
It's like she's saying, I trust you to think for yourself. What do you think happens?
Right. She's not going to spell everything out for you.
I love that. It's not passive. You're part of the story.
It's like you're co-writing it.
And that's what I love about Rooney. She makes you think.
Mhm.
She challenges you. It's not just entertainment. It's an experience.
It really makes you think about human connection and the messiness of it all. You know, the stuff we don't always want to face.
Now, the title, Conversations with Friends. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, there are a lot of conversations in the book, but I think it means more than that.
Yeah. What do you think she's getting at with that title?
Well, those conversations, they're not just small talk. They really show you who these people are, what their relationships are like.
And the word friends, that's important too. It's about intimacy, but also the possibility of like betrayal or hurting each other.
Right. And all through the book, you see those friendships changing. The lines get blurry between friendship and romance. You have to figure out what you want, what you expect from the other person.
I think that's so relatable. We all have those friendships that change. You know, those ones that really make you grow.
Conversations with Friends shows that so well. It's honest.
Yeah. It makes you think about your own friendships, what you talk about, how those conversations affect you.
Even the little things we say can mean so much.
Right. And that's where those really important connections are made. Or brewing.
It's all about paying attention to what people are saying, to what they're not saying, being present in those moments, even when they're hard.
And knowing that words have power. They can bring people together, but they can also hurt.
I think that's even more important now, in the age of social media.
Yeah, like Rooney's reminding us that real communication takes more than just typing something. It's about understanding the other person, being open.
It's a gift you can give someone, to see them and let yourself be seen, and not just in romantic relationships.
It's about creating a space where you can have those tough conversations, where you can disagree, and you learn from each other.
It's a great way to think about relationships. Now, Frances is a writer, and we see her struggling with her work, writer's block and all that.
It's like she shows you all the ups and downs of being creative.
Right. The inspiration, the doubt.
It's very real. I think anyone who makes art will connect with that. You put your work out there and it's scary. You don't know if people will like it.
But then there's that amazing feeling when you create something that matters to you.
Yeah. And Rooney's showing us that even famous artists feel insecure, that it's never easy.
It's messy, unpredictable, and you have to be open to that.
And you have to keep going, even when you're not sure of yourself. Because creating something new, that's a powerful thing.
It's like saying, I have something to say,
Mm-hmm.
and the girl needs to hear it.
Okay, some people think Conversations with Friends is too intellectual. Like the characters are always thinking about their feelings, analyzing everything. Do you think that makes them seem distant?
I think it's an interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
People think being smart means you don't have feelings.
Like it's one or the other.
Right. But that's not true. And I think that's what Rooney is showing us. These characters are smart, but they also have big emotions. They're trying to understand everything.
You're trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they're not capable of real connection.
It's about seeing intelligence as more than just facts and logic. It's also about understanding yourself and other people, being empathetic.
Yeah. I think that's a really important message, especially in a world that often prioritizes intelligence over everything else.
It's about being a whole person, your mind and your heart.
I like that. Okay, another thing I wanted to touch on is how the book deals with sexuality and gender. Frances and Bobby's relationship is particularly interesting.
It is. They used to be lovers, but it's more complicated than that.
Right. There's this closeness between them that goes beyond labels.
I think it shows how love and sex don't always fit into boxes.
Yeah.
Which is what I love about Rooney. She doesn't follow the rules.
Right. It's about recognizing that people's desires are fluid, that there are so many ways to love.
And she's saying it's okay, to be who you are, to love who you love.
Yeah. And that's really important. Now, even with all the darkness in this book, I think there's a sense of hope, too.
Definitely. It's not like cheesy hope. It's more realistic. It's about knowing you can get through things.
Like when things fall apart, you can pick yourself up and keep going.
Exactly. It's knowing you're strong, that you can heal.
Yeah. Having the courage to keep going, even when you don't know what's going to happen.
I think that's a really important message right now, when everything feels so uncertain.
Absolutely. You know, Rooney's reminding us that things can get better.
And that we can make the world a better place.
Okay, now I have to ask. Who do you think has influenced Rooney's writing?
It's hard to say for sure. You know, every writer takes inspiration from different places.
Yeah.
But there are definitely some writers who come to mind.
Well, I see some Jane Austen in there. Her sharp wit, her social observations.
They both focus on these social dynamics, those little power struggles in relationships and how people try to fit in.
And their characters are so well drawn. Real people with flaws and everything.
I also see some Virginia Woolf, especially in the way Rooney writes about what's going on inside her characters' heads.
Yes, that stream of consciousness style, the way her thoughts jump around.
Right. And she's really interested in, like, the psychology of her characters, what's driving them.
And maybe a little James Joyce, too. I mean, the way she uses language.
Oh, yeah. How she captures how people really talk.
Mm.
And that attention to detail, like how our past and where we come from affects how we see things.
I also think about some contemporary writers, like Rachel Cusk and Karl Ove Knausgård. That whole autofiction thing, blurring fact and fiction.
Yeah, yeah. Rudy's interested in the everyday stuff.
Yeah.
And how the self relates to other people.
And how society shapes our lives, right?
Exactly. But even with all those influences, she's still doing her own thing. She's got a unique voice.
Absolutely. She's speaking to a whole new generation of readers.
I think she's taken all those influences and made them into something new, something that feels really relevant right now.
It's like she's connected to something ancient, but she's also pushing things forward.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
exciting. It reminds you that books are alive, that they change with the world.
Okay, let's talk about the impact this book has had. It's really struck a chord, especially with young readers.
It's huge, right? And I think it's for a few reasons. Rudy's just a really good writer.
Yeah.
And she's writing about things that matter to people right now.
Mm.
Love and connection.
And she's so honest. And she gets it.
And don't underestimate word of mouth. People are talking about this book, telling their friends to read it.
It's like a must-read for certain people, you know?
Right. It says something about you, that you're in the know.
And the TV show has made it even bigger.
Oh, for sure. They did such a good job casting it. The actors are perfect.
I think a good adaptation can bring a story to life in a whole new way.
Yeah. And the fact that the show is so popular shows that these themes are universal. They're not just for young people.
Right. It's about those big things that everyone deals with no matter who you are. Like love, finding yourself, trying to figure out what it all means.
It reminds us that we're not so different after all.
Yeah. And that's really important, especially now.
Absolutely.
So much division in the world. And Rooney's work reminds us that we're all human.
Now, one of the cool things about conversations with friends is that it's not just a book you read, it's a book you talk about.
Definitely. Everyone's discussing it. Love, friendship, all that complicated stuff.
It's like it helps people understand their own lives.
Right. It makes you feel less alone.
And that's what's so powerful about books.
Yeah.
They can bring us together, help us understand each other.
Rooney's reminding us that even the simple things can be beautiful. Just connecting with other people.
It's about paying attention,
Mm-hmm.
noticing the little things, what people say, what they don't say.
Yeah, and being present with the people you care about.
Rooney really captures the feeling of our time, It's like conversations with friends feel so current, even though it came out a few years ago.
She gets what it's like to be young today. All the struggles with love and finding yourself.
It's like she knows exactly how it feels to be alive right now.
Yeah.
All this change, all the social and political stuff happening.
And that pressure to be perfect, online and everything.
Trying to figure out who you are in this world, feeling so alone.
And I think she's speaking for a whole generation, people who feel like they don't fit in.
That makes people feel seen,
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not the only ones who feel this way.
And that's really powerful, that shared experience.
It reminds us that we need to be kind to each other,
Yeah.
to try to understand.
Yeah, that's what we need more of in the world.
So, is Rooney's success just a fad? Or is she the real deal?
That's the question, right? It's the only time will tell. But I think she's here to stay.
Yeah. She's so talented.
Mm.
And she's writing about things that matter to people.
She's got this unique way of seeing things.
It's not just entertainment,
Right.
It makes you think about the big questions. Who are we? What does it all mean?
I think people are hungry for that. They want books that challenge them.
She's not afraid to take risks
Yeah.
or to push the boundaries.
It's like she's connected to the past, but she's also taking us somewhere new.
It's exciting. It reminds you that books are always changing, evolving.
Okay, some people say Rooney's work is too, like, millennial. All this self-awareness and overthinking. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
It's interesting. I mean, she is a millennial, and her characters are definitely dealing with millennial stuff.
Yeah.
But those feelings, worrying about love and who you are, those aren't new. Every generation deals with that.
It's like those basic human things. Trying to find your place in the world, how to have relationships.
Exactly. But Rooney's writing about it in a way that feels current.
Right. It's like she's speaking for a generation that's facing these things in a different way.
She's giving them a voice.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel like no one understands them.
Yeah, and just seeing yourself in a book, that can be so powerful.
Absolutely. It reminds you that you're not alone. Other people are going through the same things.
And that's what I think makes her work so special. It makes you feel connected to other people.
It's like she's creating this space where you can talk about the stuff that's hard to talk about.
Yeah, and books can do that, They can make you feel less alone. They can start conversations.
And that can lead to change. It can help us build a world where people are kinder and more understanding.
So if someone wants to read more Sally Rooney, what should they pick up next?
Well, her other novels, of course. Normal People and Beautiful World, Where Are You?
Right.
Same kind of themes,
Yeah.
Love, relationships, being alive today, but with different characters and different stories.
And Normal People is a TV series now, too.
Oh, yeah. It's really good. They really captured the feeling of the book.
And if you want to go even deeper, read some of Rooney's essays and interviews. She's got a lot of interesting things to say about the world.
She's definitely a writer to watch.
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job of unpacking conversations with friends.
I think so. The characters, the themes, the writing, how it's affected culture.
It's been a great conversation. I hope people have a better understanding of the book now.
I always love talking about books like this. You always find something new.
Right. That's what makes literature so amazing. There's always more to discover.
So, as we finish up, here's a question for everyone listening.
I love a good question. What is it?
Think about your own relationships. Do you see yourself in Rooney's characters? Do you feel those same anxieties about love? How hard it is to connect with people today.
That's a great question. It really makes you think about your own life. How Rooney's world connects to your own.
It reminds us that books aren't just for fun. They help us understand ourselves and the world.
Well, on that note, I'll leave everyone to think about Sally Rooney and her amazing book.
Happy reading.
It's amazing how she's become such a big name, so young, and already everyone's talking about her, but some people say her books are too, focused on millennials, all that self-awareness, the overthinking. What do you think about that?
I get it. She is writing about her generation, right? So, of course, it reflects their experiences. But I think it's more than that. I mean, those feelings of not knowing who you are, how to love someone, those aren't new.
Yeah.
People have always felt that way.
Right. It's about being human, trying to find your place, make sense of it all.
Exactly. But Rooney's doing it in a way that feels really current. Like she's speaking to people right now.
Yeah, it feels very now. It's like she understands how hard it is to be young in this world.
Right. And so many people feel like they don't belong, like no one gets them.
It's so powerful to see yourself reflected in a book,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It makes you feel less alone, less like there's something wrong with you.
And that feeling of connection, that's what I love about her books. You realize other people feel the same way.
Right. It's like she's giving people permission to talk about those things, the stuff we usually keep inside.
And that's so important. Those conversations can really change things.
Yeah. I mean, books can make us more understanding, more compassionate.
Okay, so for anyone who's ready to dive into more Sally Rooney, what would you recommend?
Well, definitely Normal People and Beautiful World, Where Are You? Or other novels.
Yeah.
They deal with some of the same stuff as Conversations with Friends, but in different ways.
And Normal People has that great TV adaptation, too.
Oh, it's so good. It really captures the feeling of the book.
And if you really want to get into her head, check out some of her essays and interviews.
Oh, yeah. She's a smart cookie. Always has something interesting to say.
Well, I think we've pretty much covered it all today.
I think so. We talked about everything, the characters, the big ideas, what makes her writing so special.
It's been really fun, and I hope everyone listening feels like they know this book a little better now.
Yeah, it's always great to revisit a book like this. There's always something new to see.
That's the magic of literature, right? You can keep coming back and finding new things.
All right, before we go, I have one last question for our listeners.
Okay, hit me with it.
Think about your own relationships, the people you're close to. Do you see those same patterns that Rooney writes about? Those anxieties, the way we try to connect? I mean, does her view of relationships feel real to you?
It's a great question to leave people with. It makes you think about how this book connects to your own life.
It reminds us that books can teach us about ourselves if we're open to it.
Well said. I guess that's it for our deep dive into Sally Rooney and Conversations with Friends.
Thanks for listening.